Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Space for Life. It's reunion week this week on Space for Life. I have back as my special guest that we haven't been together podcasting for a long time, Patricia Clarke, good, close friend, partner in a lot of things that we have had the privilege and fun of doing together, to talk about a topic that I think a lot of people care a lot about, but there's also a lot of mystery about. And it's the topic of finding and living a life of purpose. And I'm really excited to share in this conversation with Patricia about this, because she is someone that I have, kind of walked with in a lot of different ways, podcasting together, teaching together. And I've seen in really crystal clear, vivid ways, the way, Patricia, that you have lived and are living a life of purpose. And what sparked this idea for this episode for me is that the way you do it is very different than the way I do it. And I think that's worth a conversation, because living a life of purpose looks really different depending on the situation of someone, their personality, the way their mind works. And my hope in this episode is that we're just going to spark a lot of possibility in people's minds and a lot of creativity, and yet help people perhaps navigate this territory that is very confusing for a lot of people. So I'm really excited to be podcasting together. We podcasted, 50, 100 episodes together?
So many. Yeah. And there's a comfort in working together because I think we're so different in the way we operate. And I really benefit from some of the skill sets and the ways you think about things. I find it a really good, there's this song by Need to Breathe called like Banks to the River. I feel like you're like really good banks to keep us on track and to keep the focus. And I love this topic for today about purpose.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I love the topic about purpose is I think that question never goes away. Yeah. Like, it's not a question that you ask in your 20s and your 30s, what's my purpose for life? It's a question that at every age and every stage in our life, we can find ourselves saying, what is my purpose? What is this season going to be about? What do I want to focus on? Even my mother-in-law is in her late 70s and has Parkinson's, and her life has slowed down a lot. And yet I love watching her because she's doing such interesting work and has stayed really active in her mind and is having an impact on the community, even though she's not working in any capacity and she's really slowed down a lot. She's even asking that question and moving forward with purpose.
It's a great way of putting it. And the very fact that you bring up Need to Breathe in that song, it's kind of like so typical of the different way. I mean, I would never think about that for a podcast. And yet, that's just right off the top of your head that you think that way. But it is so true that purpose carries through our entire lives.
Yeah.
As soon as we're willing to ask the question and begin to figure it out, it becomes relevant in every place, every season of life, every sphere of life. Is constantly changing because those things change for us. And so we're constantly having to redefine the way our purpose looks for us. And so it's constant. So late 60s, I'm still asking it. And I'm asking it now in different ways than I did just 10, 15 years ago, which was different from before that. And I know even that is going to change a lot. And it's also such a, I think, important conversation because there are ways sometimes people talk about purpose that makes it seem very secretive and exclusive. Like, I know my purpose in life. Do you know your purpose in life? Kind of thing. And it's like this mystery we have to uncover. And once you get it, you found the key to all of life. And so then there are those who found the key to all of life and those who, sorry, you haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
And so I kind of hope to demystify some of that in just talking about it.
Yeah, for sure. Because, I'm such a believer in the beauty of a single human being. I mean, I think we know this, like a single human being, there's something incredibly miraculous about them. And I love Michelangelo's perspective on art because I think it applies to human beings, where when he would do a sculpture, and I know you've probably heard this before, but he wouldn't impose his idea on the piece of stone. He thought it was his job to free through his sculpting and chipping what was already there. Like sort of the art that was already within the stone. And I think the same applies with human beings. Our job in finding purpose is not implanting something. It starts with believing and knowing that it's already there. And it's as unique as every species of nature is. You can look in nature and see there's categories, there's classes of animals, there's categories of plants, but no two species are alike.
Right.
Each species is important for the ecosystem. And human beings are so much more like, we're spiritual beings. I mean, there's so much more to a human being. So it's even more so with a human being, and believing that there is something beautiful and there is a purpose within you is, I think, a really good place to start. Not feeling like you have to go out and get it, knowing it's already there.
Well, yeah. And I think along with that, I'm one of the perhaps a little bit more rare ones that kind of many decades ago came up with kind of a purpose statement, very clearly defined. And yet the reality is that my sense of purpose is constantly being revealed to me. I'm learning new things about how God wired me and what I'm meant to do with my life, even at this stage. So the beauty and kind of the joy of living into a purpose is it's this constant revelation. It's this constant learning process about yourself and this revelation of who you can be and how you can grow. And to me, that's one of the reasons coming to grow and to understand purpose is so important, because it's just part of the beauty and joy of life, is that we're growing into something. We're growing more towards a destiny. So anyway,
I do think that it's kind of cool that it's something that distinguishes us in the natural world to even want a purpose in life.
Yeah. Yes.
Like that distinguishes us. Like, I don't think every part of the natural world or the animals are having these metaphysical moments where you can step outside of yourself and look at your life and say, I want to direct it a little bit. I want to be intentional about it. I want to matter in the world. And it's worth affirming this part of us as humans, that we are hardwired to long for intimacy with other human beings and to long for impact.
Yeah.
And I know I got that from some book somewhere and I can't remember where, so I'm sorry. But I do believe it, and it's played out in life, that we are hardwired for intimacy and impact.
Yeah.
And that impact can be, in a small sphere, like in your own home. It can be in your workplace. It can be out in the community. But we're hardwired to want to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And we're also hardwired to want to connect with other human beings in the world. And I think those two streams really inform the drive to want to find purpose.
Sure. And the level and the intensity of those two things might differ from person to person.
For sure. And, they can also be perverted, right? Like intimacy, there can be, or impact can be all about like ego or like using other people. I mean, there's a real way that those can be, I don't know if perverted is the wrong word, but like misused.
Yeah. Poisoned. Yeah.
Poisoned. Yeah. But I think that essential longing for impact and intimacy is like a guide for us.
Right.
Those longings are going to be the very things that pull us towards our purpose.
Yeah, I think so. So, in our conversation, I want to get into, at one point, how could we help navigate people towards understanding a little bit more about their purpose in life, because sometimes it's not particularly obvious and it's confusing. So what are some of the elements that might help that? But before I go there, I'd love for you to just kind of describe over the years, how have you thought about your purpose, about living into purpose? Do you think about it consciously? Do you just do things? Because that's one of the places we're probably different. Mm-hmm. And I think there's, that incredible value in the different ways. And I've seen you living a life of purpose, but I don't even know whether you really think about it all that much.
Yeah, that's a great question. I really long to live a life of purpose, but I don't ever feel like I know what my purpose is going forward. I can see it looking back. I can see when I look back on seasons of my life, that was meaningful, or I'm glad I did that, or that was a good use of my time, talent, and treasure, or whatever the language is. When you ask me, what do you think about purpose? I do remember being in Douglas South Hall Freeman hallway as a junior and talking to my good friend Lori at our lockers. And she was really smart, and we were kind of idea people. And I think she was like a little burgeoning feminist. And she said, in such a cool way, and I wanted to be like that too. And she said, what are you going to study in college? What are you going to do when you grow up? And I just remember being really quiet, and I didn't say it because I was kind of embarrassed, because she wanted to do something like huge professionally. And I never thought about it. I was like, I'm just going to be a mom. Like, I really had not thought about it, which I think being a mom is amazing.
Yeah.
But that was literally all I knew. And one of the things that has like guided my choices and my steps is just the next thing in front of me that seems to fit with my faith, that seems to fit with my skill set. And also that there's these sort of inspirational moments that I have that are a lot about how I make my decisions about the next thing I'm going to do, is opportunities will come my way or ideas will land in my head.
Right.
And they have a certain quality about them. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But they have a certain quality about them. There's a lightness to them. There's a goodness to them. There's a feeling of love associated with what I want to do, whether it involves other people, whether it involves the community. And it's like, it's just a feeling I get, like, walk in this way and do the next thing. And I don't even know where it's going to go. I personally don't think, I feel like I don't look at my life necessarily and think, oh, I've found my one purpose and calling. And, I just sort of do the next thing.
Right. And that's exactly why I wanted you to talk about this.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, because...
And it's also why I like having you in my life, because I feel like you help me ascertain a purpose, which I don't necessarily think of myself as having one.
Well, I don't think I even need to help you ascertain, because you're doing exactly, what you're meant to do. But what I love that you kind of expressed, which is what I wanted to capture, is that for a lot of people, living a life of purpose and living spontaneously can coexist.
I mean, all the major turn points in my life, like I remember my first job as an English teacher. It just fell out of the sky. My mom called me and said, I found a job opening in the newspaper. And I was working at a marketing agency, didn't like it. When I went to seminary, I was having a conversation with a friend, and she just sort of launched the idea. And there's a quality of ideas or suggestions when they land that just feel like a click. And that is a lot of how I make decisions in my life.
Well,
and over time, there's a thread and a continuity to it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a spiritual discerning. It's not just kind of guessing and a woo-woo feeling type of thing. I mean, there's a clarity of a quality of what would come from this. There are lots of particular things, but there's a spontaneity too that I think is really great. Doesn't mean that you don't intentionally enter into things either. Now, I'm probably, if you're like 75% spontaneous and 25%, I'm going to start with some intentionality, some plans. I'm the other.
Yeah.
I'm 75% intentional, as if I'm in control of things, which I'm not. But that's the way my mind works, is I want to plan and think things out and structure things and get my head around it and make sure it makes sense and that it worked with all of my filters and everything. And then yet there are these spontaneous things that happen. And there isn't one right or the other.
But what's cool is that I think your way of thinking not only determines how you come about finding your purpose, your way of thinking is a skill set that you are giving to other people in a way that they need and they benefit from. Like, one of your great callings in life, I think, is to teach and coach other people. And so the fact that you think this way and you think in systems and you think in how to organize time and all of those things, like those are gifts that you have that you're always giving to other people. I mean, my life was way more organized when I podcasted with you regularly. I mean, not exactly, but I did really benefit. Yeah. I was always like taking away, this free life coaching from working with you.
Yeah.
And I think too, like the way I think and the way I operate and view the world really shows up in my teaching and the way I communicate with people. And so our processes become a part of our purpose.
Yeah, it was really interesting for those who don't know a little bit more about us. We had real joy this past January of teaching a class together on the book of Philippians with our good friend J.G. Carter. And we taught it as a threesome, a 4-week study. And the idea behind it is that we wanted to bring to that class not only learning about the book of Philippians, in the Bible, but to see the breadth and difference of style of how we teach. Mm-hmm. And so we spent a lot of time together, and it was so much fun to kind of hear the way your mind worked in terms of forming the pieces that you did, and then the way my mind works, and then the way JG's mind works. It was 3 completely different ways of thinking about it. And you're an incredibly gifted teacher, and JG is too. And so to me, the beauty and the fun of it was bringing our different styles and persons and ways of seeing things to that one singular task. And that's kind of a similar thing with purpose, that you recognize it more in the rear view mirror. Mm-hmm. I'm more looking forward to seeing, does it fit kind of these criteria, that I would think about. We end up in the same place. Mm-hmm. I think living, hopefully, a life of purpose. At least it feels that way to me. And that is incredibly fulfilling to me. But we arrive at it at different places.
Yeah, I think you have come up with some language around purpose that when you name it, and I'd love for you to name some of the words that you've come up with about finding your purpose, it does help serve as guidepost going forward. And I'm wondering if you would tell them, because they resonated with me as I look in my rearview mirror, is like, that I really think you have accurate words to describe what I look back on as being indicative of purpose in my life.
Yeah, it's been helpful to me because I think that as I've talked to people about trying to understand or identify a sense of purpose in life, it's kind of like, where do I begin with? That just seems like such a, up in the clouds word. How do I go about it? And so I've realized that in many ways, there's a simplicity to understanding purpose. It still takes some work, but there's a simplicity that if we pay attention to some few things, we'll begin to kind of take different streams of light and point it all in a similar direction that kind of looks like purpose. So the couple, and I'll just describe them, and then I'd love to just hear your thoughts on it. I think our purpose is always a place of passion in our life. It's always something that gets our juices going. We get excited about. If we don't get excited about something, it doesn't mean that we're not good, that we can't do good things with it, but that unique place, which I always think about purpose as the unique person God's created us to be and the unique thing he's called us to do, that being and doing. If passion isn't a part of it, I think it could be good, but it isn't what I think of as purpose. So for instance, I have an aptitude for math. I've had it since I was a little kid. There is not much about math that excites me.
Right.
So I could and did over many years run the finances of companies and stuff. And I was competent at doing, but it wasn't my purpose. And that became really clear. And I had to identify that just because I was good at it didn't mean that's what I was meant to do, at my deepest place.
Well, and I'm going to put a pin in that real fast. Part of learning your purpose is doing something for a while and realizing this is great, I'm good at it, but I don't want to spend my life doing it.
Yeah.
And you just sort of, it's that trial and error. It's like the chiseling with Michelangelo. Chiseled, okay, tried that, been there, done that.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't been there and done that, though, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
So you're learning.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which kind of points to the fact that there's a forensic nature to
for sure
understanding your purpose. You actually look back, and even over things that you did as a kid or in high school or college, there are lots of clues. And they may not even be obvious clues, but that go no or yes.
Well, they were always there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's never ending. I mean, like I said, I love thinking about my mother-in-law. I mean, she's still doing this. I don't think, as long as we live and breathe, we have a purpose.
Yes.
If you have a pulse, you have a purpose, is my favorite quote from Catherine Wolfe.
Yeah.
And so you're always thinking, like, this is the day that the Lord has made. Like, what do you have for me?
Yeah.
What is my purpose today in line with your will?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would say that is inevitably going to be a part of a rightly understood purpose is passion.
Okay, passion.
I'd say a second thing, you could call it strengths, you could call it talents, you could call it powers, but it's a competency.
Yeah.
And I could be very, very passionate about basketball, but it's not my purpose in life because the talent and the competency is just not there, and it wouldn't be there no matter how hard I tried. I could get better at it, but no, it's not who I am literally created to be. So I do believe that at some level, purpose is going to sink in with what we're good at.
For sure. And I think this is where hobbies come into place, because there are so many things I wish I was good at, because I love music, I love art, I love all these things, but I will never be good at those things. But that's like the fun part about life, is we get to appreciate other people's purpose.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, that goes back to that, like, humans were herd animals. We're meant to, like, enjoy each other and operate as a pack, because other people are going to be great at things we're not.
And there's nothing wrong with spending some of who we are for something that we're passionate about and not particularly good at.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. Hobbies are great for that. So it's not like everything has to be about this singular, tunnel vision about purpose. So, it's great to understand that we're passionate about things and we might just be, kind of average at them. But the purpose is there's going to be an intersection at some point of what we are really passionate about and what we are good at. And we should pay particular attention to what other people tell us we're good at, because we may not really have it correctly in our own mind, or other people might identify what we're good at with different words and nuance than we've identified ourselves. So again, that forensic piece to me looks at the past and says, where were the places where something kind of different happened in terms of the fruitfulness of it? And what were those things that stood out? So pay attention to that.
I really think that's an important point, because a lot of times we admire something someone else is good at and we think it's so cool and so remarkable, and we're unimpressed with something that we're naturally good at.
Yes. It's very true.
We're unimpressed with it, but because we've sort of grown up with it, we take it for granted. But what is interesting is I do think all people usually have some aptitude or nuance to their personality or way of thinking that comes more easily to them than to other people. It's just natural. And it takes less energy. It's like you're wired to be that way and do that way. And it's not necessarily a specific job office. It's more just there's something you bring to the world that's easier for you than it is for most people.
Well, and it's the very fact that it becomes easier is the reason we discount it.
Right.
Because it comes easily. So we kind of think, well, you could do that, if you put your mind to it, you could do that very easily. There's not really anything special about that. And so we need those voices from the outside to say, no, something different happens when you do this. This is a gift. This is a talent. This is something to pay attention to. So it's worth listening to those people.
Well, I also think if you don't care about it in terms of like patting yourself on the back and you kind of take it for granted because it comes so easily to you, that's a good thing because there's a little bit less of your ego wrapped up in it.
Sure.
Whereas the things we think, oh, I just wish I could be that, or, usually there's a little bit of an identity issue involved there,
right.
Versus just celebrating who you are and the way you're wired.
Yeah. So like two of the really critical ones, passion and your strengths, talents. We can use a lot of words around that.
So let's do power. So your powers.
Powers, yeah.
So passion. Are we all P's?
I actually had a version of this because I think about all this. That's all P's.
Because we need to make it portable so people can remember.
Yeah. So let's add another P to it. Personality.
Okay. So passion, powers, personality.
And God wired us with a personality. We might call it extrovert, introvert. There are lots of different aspects, spontaneous versus very structured. You could take the Myers-Briggs, you could take the Enneagram. All of these different things are expressing at some level that there's an internal wiring that works for us. And as importantly, there's an internal wiring of who we are that doesn't work for us. And we have to, I think, honor a personality, not as something that we just overcome and we ignore and push through because we're passionate about something and we're good at something, but we need to honor our personality, that's part of who God made us to be and who he did not make us to be, in order to zero in that much more. So for me, I'll just give an example of that. Many years ago, I taught for an extended period of time, probably 10, 15 years, an adult Sunday school class at Third Church. I absolutely loved it. But one of the reasons I loved it is I partnered with a good friend, Randall White, who was the czar of the class. So he was the MC for the class, and he brought energy and humor and community and some structure to it that allowed me to give all of my energy to what I feel like is my purpose and love and passion, which is teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to take all of that energy and pour it into things that just are not who I am. And if I had, I probably would have only lasted a year because it would have exhausted me. But I could go for years because his incredible giftedness in that area allowed me to give all of my focus, knowing that from a personality standpoint, I'm an introvert, actually by nature. I can fake it, pretty well, but I'm an introvert. And I didn't have to worry about that. I could just show up and do what I just love to do, which was teach. In order for me to be clear on that, I had to be as clear what I am not wired to be in my personality.
Yeah, I think that's so it's passion, power, personality. I know a young person who was showing a lot of promise as an entrepreneur, and she and her team, their product won a big contest and they were getting money put towards them. And after a year of working, this young person realized that although she had the skill set, the powers, so to speak, the passion, the lifestyle was crushing.
Yes.
The lifestyle was crushing and it wasn't sustainable. And so the personality type, the parameters that you need just might not work for you just because you're good at something. Like I think of musicians probably often fall in this category. Like they might be famous and they might be rock and roll stars, but the lifestyle, if at some point they have to rein it in because it's just not sustainable. Or a lot of startups are that way. And like, what good is it to gain the world and like lose your soul or like lose your health or whatever?
Exactly. Do you love to be around people or do you need a ton of quiet time? What's your energy level like? I mean, there are all sorts of different things. So for me in trying to help someone, I would just say, just describe to me who you are. What do you, how do you interact with people? How do you interact with teams? What do you hate doing? Some things like that to just try to get under the hood, so to speak, as to the way that motor works, because that motor's got to work, as you say, for the sustainability on it.
And we tend to beat ourselves up, I think, all along the way, but especially when we're younger, but all along the way about our deficiencies.
Yeah.
But sometimes those deficiencies are just the way we're made, and we need to work within those instead of try and like, sort of, I don't know, sometimes accepting deficiencies is an important part of finding your purpose rather than trying to be someone you're not.
It's very true. And if you can accept exactly what you're saying, then it's very freeing because all of a sudden we don't have to be all things to all people.
Right.
We don't have to fill every gap. It isn't about it. It's about who God uniquely made us to be, not who we are not.
I mean, I remember for probably a decade, I would look at other people and think, I could do that. I can do that. But I'm not wired to, like you are, to have these like purpose statements for a year and push out all this content. I'm just not wired that way. And it was very freeing for me when I just accepted myself about that and entrusted it to God that this is the way you made me to be. And I will do what you have for me. I don't have to be like someone else.
Well,
grace, giving yourself grace for your strengths, powers, but also your limitations, I think is such an important part of finding your purpose in life is to accept yourself as a human being with proficiencies and deficiencies.
It's so true.
And when we try and ignore our deficiencies or be someone that we're not, essentially we're trying to play God. And that's where like ego comes into place. And we're always, always better off being small so that God can be great in our lives.
Yeah.
We are always better off because David Dwight, our pastor, preached on this recently about our human constitution is not made up to take on the role that God takes on.
Yeah.
We can't, it's too heavy of a burden for us. It's going to be bad for our bodies. It's going to be bad for our souls, our minds, our hearts. And so that there's this freedom that we find when we extend grace for our deficiencies, accept ourselves for who we are.
Yeah.
To go about our purpose with a lightheartedness. And that energy that's freed up actually makes us better in the lane we're supposed to be instead of trying to be someone we're not.
I love that because, living a life of purpose, whether it's you or me or whomever, is not about becoming great. It's becoming who we are.
Yeah.
And the more we can accept ourselves, the more we can appreciate what other people bring to the table, the more we can see we're just one in many. And there is a lot of healthiness.
Yeah, that's
that.
great. All right, I'm reviewing because I forget easily. Passion, power, personality.
Yeah. And the fourth one that I would throw into it kind of ruins it, but it is another P, but it's kind of using something as a definition. It's purpose.
Okay.
The idea behind that particular word in these four categories is that I think in finding our purpose, we have to think that what we're giving ourselves to is worthwhile.
Right.
That
it's like meaningful. It has meat to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we don't think it has meaning, it might suit our personality. We might be really good at it. We might be passionate about it, but it will fizzle out with time if we don't think it matters.
You and I talk about this a lot because I sometimes think, maybe I should just stop all that I'm doing and go pursue like some sort of athletic thing. Not that I like the most talented, any of that anymore, but that appeals to me. But I dream about that sometimes. And I know you talk about doing that with golf, like pursuing golf.
Yeah.
But I do know that at some point, if I really put all my eggs in that basket, all my time, treasure, and talent in that basket, it might fall a little flat for me because I think we are wired for impact in that way. Not like at least I am. I'm wired for there to be more meaning to the way I spend my time. And so I have curbed a little bit of my athletic passion to being a hobby.
What I think is important to understand is what's meaningful to me is not necessarily the same thing that's meaningful to you. Like as much as I love golf, and anybody listening to this knows that I do, and I can be incredibly passionate about it. I've come to understand about myself that if I were to give all of myself to that it's not what I'm meant to do. And yet I know of other people that find incredible meaning in giving themselves to golf.
Yeah.
They find their purpose, their calling in life towards that. So the way we understand something to be meaningful can be incredibly individual. Someone might find it in the environment. Someone might find it in medicine. Someone might find it in a sport. Someone might find it in creating a song. Someone might find it in making a lot of money. There isn't a right or wrong, but there's something very individual about this purpose, meany piece.
It matters to you. It's meaningful to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something about it, resonates deeply. I talked with someone recently on the Links for Life, who is a golf coach. And he said he had to come to the place that he was doing something real. And for him, coaching golf was really real, with lots of meaning and purpose. For the next person, that might be a complete waste. Mm-hmm. He might look at what I'm doing and say, that's a complete waste. Who's listening to that or whatever? Mm-hmm. But it somehow has to tick that box of it's meaningful to me because I think God wired that in us. Not that we're just manufacturing. I think God called us in a sense to that meaning. And so identifying as we go through, well, what am I passionate about? What's my personality like? What am I really good at? But what matters to me deeply is, I think, as critical a piece to this as anything.
Yeah, and I think you have mentioned what's the Venn diagram? Like, where do all those circles, those orbs come together and you find a space in the middle? And I think the catalyst sometimes to pain, passion, purpose, and powers coming together over the course of your life is another P. I think there's something incredibly catalytic and refining about pain. And I think whether it's pain in your job, pain in your family, pain in your personal life, there's something about that refining fire that helps you know who you are and know who you're not. It keeps your ego in check. And there's always been something creative and generative about pain and dying in the natural world. Like, life comes from death. You know, the tree, the acorn has to fall to the ground and die before it becomes a tree. And that same pattern in our life will show up where there's sort of a dying of a dream or a dying of something you thought you would be. And that pain ends up being creating something new in your life. So I would
I love that.
Not avoid, like, just because you're in a season of life, we never outgrow this, are in a season of life that feels painful, doesn't mean you're not in your place moving towards purpose. Like the one book that I wrote that, well, a couple of things I've put out, but the one that I've done that was the most substantive, I did during the pandemic, and probably one of the most difficult times of my life. Like, there was just a million things going on. And I look back, I'm like, wait, did I actually produce that during that book, during that period of time? Because there is something where it strips you down to the essential.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad that you brought that into the discussion, because pain does a lot of things. One of the things it does is it clarifies.
Yeah.
It gives clear vision to something that needs that. So, the very first time I ever asked kind of really this question was at a place where it was prompted by the thought, something's missing in my life. There was a pain because I was doing things and I felt nothing with it. And, of course, the clarifying place of suffering and grief is unbelievable in terms of how it will define things for you and bring clarity. So I think it's a great framework to say, let me welcome or appreciate pain as a voice in my life that is worth listening to, that might help me in ways that couldn't be helped without that pain.
Yeah. And I don't know if we have time. I thought about a story that I wanted to ask if I can tell you. Because it kind of ties into your brother, Mike, a little bit. Is it okay if I talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it ties into the idea of pain and purpose. So recently I went out to Joshua Tree with my family for spring break, and we were doing a lot of hiking, and it was really hot and dry, and there was no water anywhere in the desert. It's amazing how dry it is. It's kind of cool. But at one point we drove to Palm Springs, and there's a waterfall hike. And it's surreal after spending days in dry desert where there's just no water to hiking up a mountain. There's cactus on all sides. And then you come to this place where there's massive amounts of rushing, flowing water. And we hiked up, and you could see the waterfall above, hundreds of feet of water coming down. It's so loud. It's the power of the water. And then there was a little pool, and there was a tree that was growing in such a way that it went over the water and then went up. So you could sit on this tree, and my two kids were kind of playing in the pool, and then the water would flow down the mountain. So I was laying on this tree. So hang with me here. I have an extended family member who is nearing the end of her life, and it was happening while I was there. So I was laying on this tree, and I was feeling and hearing, and I was closing my eyes. I was tired, so I was kind of taking a nap, and I was feeling the rush of this water going underneath me. And I was thinking about my extended family member dying. And it made me realize she has carried so much pain in the last, 20 years, from the pandemic, some dementia, just some hard things that happen, that it's baggage that you pick up over your life.
Right.
She's also lived a great life and done a lot of great things. And one of the things that I think is important to think about when we talk about purpose is this. And this is where your brother comes in. When we die, all the pain that we've picked up along the way, it's just washed away. Like, we don't have to carry it anymore. And I know your brother, and I know this extended family member did all the right things to try and get rid of the harm that you pick up along the way. You pick up pain along the way, and it wounds you and damages you. And we're like broken creatures by the time we get to the end of our life. And there's such a hidden mercy in death, because that pain completely disappears. It just gets washed away. But you know what lasts? And this is where purpose comes in. Everything your brother did over the course of his life that was done out of love, it lasts. I mean, it does. There's a surreal quality to acts, deeds, relationships, anything that we do in our life that is put out in love has an eternal quality to it and carries on. I think about all the people that your brother impacted through music, through counseling, through the many, many things he did in his life. And those kernels of love are still living today, even though he is not. But his pain is no more. And I love thinking about that with purpose, because I get really caught up in what matters and what accounts and amounts to something. But anything that we do with our life that is done out of love will last.
Yeah.
And anything we do in our life that is born out of love is purposeful.
That is really great. I love that. We may do a lot of things, but it's, like 1 Corinthians now, faith, hope, and love abide. The greatest of these is love. If I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but I have love, I'm just a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. It is so true, and it's a important reminder as we talk about something that we can so easily use for self-elevation, and that's not what it's about at all. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, and also, I mean, I know certainly I've done a lot of things and spent a lot of time on things that have amounted to nothing.
Yeah.
And it is a nice decision filter as you approach your life, because there's a verse that says, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain.
Yeah.
And, I've had projects that I've spent so much time on, and they've just amounted to nothing.
Yeah.
And then I've had things that I've fallen in my lap, and I just responded, and they've far outlasted or outlived anything I could have hoped or imagined.
Yeah.
And So yeah, it's just something to think about, like not just as our pain washed away, but honestly, a lot of the big famous things that happen with people that we think of are amazing in their life, like nobody even remembers it.
Yeah.
Several generations later. But any act that person did in love does live on.
Yeah.
It just does. It
does.
gets passed on because it nourishes the person.
Yeah.
It nourishes the community. It nourishes the whatever is being done. It doesn't even have to be a person. Like when it's done in love, it matters. I mean, even we talk about if we ever had to move, we would just probably get rid of all of our furniture except the furniture that my father made and the furniture that has like nostalgic value to it because of people.
Yeah.
Like the rest of the stuff is expendable, but the furniture made in love will last. The artwork that we have that was made by a real artist who made it in love, it'll last. It's going to get passed down. I mean, the objects we make in love will last.
Yeah, that's so good because, sometimes we think about purpose in terms of, well, it's got to be about these people or things like that. And you could take that piece of furniture and it could be a piece of furniture that is nothing but wood, but love transforms it.
Yeah.
And love changes what your father has done with so much of his life in creating furniture for people into something incredibly meaningful and purposeful because it has been done in love.
Or even, I mean, and this speaks to older people who are listening. My grandmother, I remember teaching me how to make mashed potatoes when I was in middle school. She died when I was in high school. But every time I make mashed potatoes, every single holiday, I remember her teaching me how to make mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
And I'll teach my girls how to make mashed potato, my boys how to make mashed potatoes that way. And I could have looked up a mashed potato recipe on the internet, but
it wouldn't be the same.
My grandmother's act of love lives in a way that a recipe wouldn't, and she lives in a way. So it's this cool thing how love has an eternal quality to it, and not in some like ethereal, abstract, ideal way, in like a tangible way. Like the things we do with love last.
Well, and that's that in a sense a place where passion comes in.
Yeah.
It has to matter to us. We need to care. It needs to be done, in love. So as I think about pulling this together, what my real hope in all this is to encourage people into the creativity and the individuality and the breadth of understanding purpose. Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't look like just doing something that people go, well, that's really making a big difference. It could be making furniture. It could be cooking. It can be all sorts of things, because when these ingredients, we've talked about the passion and the personality and the powers and the purpose all come together, something really magical happens. And that's kind of that uniqueness of a human being. So I love your thoughts, because you teach a lot of women, you teach a lot of people across, different age groups. As you think of them asking this question of, how do you go about finding and living a life of purpose? Kind of what are some of your takeaways, I guess, from this?
Well, I love your words. I think they're really helpful to think about. And I don't know, I do think of some of the women I know and love, and I think most of them are finding it.
Yeah.
Because they want to, and God is leading them. And it's not as much on us as we realize. Like he's going to help them find the way. And, since we're on the P front, like if I would say to them, if you're feeling stuck and lost and like you don't have purpose in your life, you can pray and ask. And maybe if you feel lost or if you're in a lot of pain, you're disoriented. Well, remember the Israelites felt like that. They wandered around in the desert for years and years, and God led them, and those years were not wasted. So I really believe in all people, wherever they are in the process, that this is happening. Like you are finding your purpose, and not to be discouraged.
Yeah, hope is so important, that we hope that God will reveal these things to us. So, yeah, I think that's really important.
I mean, when I see anyone younger than me or older, I just want to encourage them.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because I do all these various things with my life, but I find the things that make me the most happy is when I get a chance to like encourage somebody at what they're already doing to like believe in themselves.
Yeah.
I just get really excited in the opportunity to do that. And you talk about yourself being a teacher. I don't even think of myself as a teacher. But I do find a lot of, even though I teach a lot.
Yes.
I think of myself as someone who's passionate about believing in other people and encouraging other people.
Yeah.
And sometimes that shows up in my teaching. Sometimes it shows up in hanging out with people.
Yeah.
But that to me feels like a through line to everything I do. And I don't think we know our through lines looking forward. We tend to know them looking back.
Yeah.
And I love my through line.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with it.
Well, I mean, that's such a sign of purpose,
Yeah.
And, you are a gifted teacher, no question, but, your giftedness as an encourager and a come alongside person is, extraordinary. And really beautiful.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, yeah, I hope for those listening, I hope you're encouraged. I hope this brings hope for you. I would say one thing that I would say is that sometimes uncovering what God is seeking to reveal takes a little bit of work. Takes a little bit of thought. There's some intention sometimes behind it. And so I would encourage people, perhaps just with the simplicity of these, 4 or 5 words, to say, maybe God's got something for me. And maybe he has something for me to learn. Maybe he has something to reveal to me. And there's a lot of glory in that. And there's a lot of joy to be had in living a life of purpose. And, as much as you are gifted in so many ways, I wanted to have this conversation together because I see you living your best life, and I feel like not because of myself, but because of God's goodness, that I'm able to live my best life. And I just want that for other people, and I think finding that revealed purpose is a big part of that.
I do. And I love your work to help people find that. And it's not a maybe, it's a definite.
Yeah.
Like people do have a purpose.
Yes.
And I think the purpose,
because God's their creator.
Yeah. And I also think the purpose that we have, another prayer I have sometimes is, God, help me to feel satisfied with what I'm doing. Like a sense of like, I feel good about it. I feel proud about it. And I'm content with the work I've done. Not that I don't want to keep doing, not even work, but content with the way I'm spending my life and my time. I long to feel grateful and satisfied about it. And when I pray that, sometimes I find I do. I'm like, gosh, that was great. That was really good. And I think there's this verse where God says, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
And that we can ask God to move us in the direction where we feel that way about ourselves. Like, well done, Tommy. Like, you have done well.
Yeah.
And look at all the loving things you've done in your life and the ways you've blessed other people and impacted them. And doesn't that make you feel full inside? And I think I want that for everybody, to have that feeling.
Couldn't agree more. I love it.
So,
thank you. That's all we need to say. Hope you'll share this episode. I hope you'll perhaps pursue this episode, the P word, in it. Thank you for joining us. This has been a fun reunion, Patricia. I'm looking forward to sharing this with everybody and you sharing it with others. Bye-bye.